Okay, so we're diving into biblical leadership today.
Uh-huh.
You guys have sent in this article by Carrie Ann Cassidy.
Yes.
It's got 9 key qualities
Right.
for a great leader, and they're biblically inspired.
Yeah,
We've got a lot to unpack, so let's get right into it.
absolutely.
And we're even going to look at some figures from the Old Testament
Okay.
to see how they embody these principles in their own lives,
Yeah.
which I'm kind of excited about.
Me too.
So,
Yeah.
what I find really fascinating
Uh-huh.
is that Cassidy's emphasis here
Yeah.
isn't so much about like traditional power or
Yeah.
authority.
Right.
It's more about serving other people,
Uh-huh.
making a real difference in the world.
Yeah.
It kind of flips the script on what we normally think of as leadership.
It really does.
So,
Yeah.
she lays out 9 key qualities. Here we go.
Okay.
Fear of the Lord over man,
Yes.
humility,
Uh-huh.
integrity,
Yep.
wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
gentleness, courage, being relational, readiness, and a servant heart.
Right.
That's a lot.
That is a lot.
We've got our work cut out for us today.
Yes, we do.
So, let's just jump right in.
Sure.
Let's start with this idea of fear the Lord over man.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
this one initially kind of threw me off.
Mm-hmm.
How can fear be a positive quality?
Right.
Especially when you're talking about leadership,
Mm-hmm.
isn't it usually something that holds people back?
That's a great question.
So how do we reconcile that?
Well, I think it's important to understand what fear actually means.
Okay.
In this context, it's not about being terrified
Okay.
and paralyzed by anxiety.
Uh-huh.
It's more about having a deep respect and reverence for God
Okay.
and recognizing that our actions have consequences
Hmm.
and just seeking to live in accordance with God's will.
So it's less about being scared and more about being mindful of a
Yes.
higher authority.
Exactly.
Almost like internalizing a moral compass.
Precisely.
Okay.
Cassidy points to Proverbs 29.25, which says, "The fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe."
Yeah, okay.
It's just a reminder that if we're always worried about pleasing people
Right.
or seeking approval,
Yeah.
we're likely to compromise our values.
Uh-huh.
But when we prioritize our relationship with God, we
Mhm.
find the strength and courage to stand by our convictions,
Right.
even when it's unpopular.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Especially when you think about all the tough calls leaders have to make.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there's no easy answer,
Right.
but having that internal compass,
Yes.
that grounding in something larger than yourself,
Absolutely.
I think could be incredibly helpful in those moments.
For sure.
And that leads us perfectly into the next quality,
Right.
humility.
Right.
If you truly fear the Lord,
Uh-huh.
wouldn't that also lead to a sense of humility?
Absolutely.
Recognizing you're not the ultimate authority.
That's right.
That's something I struggle with.
I think we all do.
It's so easy to get caught up in the idea of being in charge.
But true leadership seems to require something much deeper.
It really does.
And I think Moses is a great example of this.
Yes.
He's often held up as this iconic leader in the Bible.
Right.
And he really seemed to embrace humility.
Absolutely.
He did. Yeah.
He really did.
Leading the Israelites out of Egypt. I mean,
Yeah.
what a monumental task.
Oh my goodness.
Filled with challenges
At every turn.
every step of the way.
Yeah.
Yet, time and time again, Moses deferred to God's guidance.
Right.
He sought wisdom through prayer.
Yes.
He acknowledged his own limitations.
Mm-hmm.
And he trusted that God would provide a way,
Mm-hmm.
even when it seemed impossible.
Exactly.
And that must have taken an incredible amount of trust,
It really must have.
especially when you're responsible for an entire nation.
Yeah.
There must have been moments when he doubted
Right.
or when he wanted to just take control and figure things out on his own.
For sure.
How did he stay so grounded,
Yeah.
so humble?
In the midst of all that pressure.
I think that's where his deep faith and his fear of the Lord come in.
Okay.
He recognized that he wasn't doing this alone,
Right.
that he was an instrument in God's plan,
Mm,
and that allowed him to lead with humility,
mm,
knowing that ultimate success didn't depend on his own strength or cleverness.
that's a powerful lesson.
It really is.
And I think it's something a lot of modern leaders could benefit from.
Absolutely.
There's so much pressure to have all the answers. To be the hero.
Yeah.
But maybe true strength comes from admitting you don't have it all figured out
Mm.
and being willing to rely on something bigger than yourself.
Yeah. I love that.
And I think that naturally leads us to the next quality,
Okay. Yeah.
integrity.
Right. So how does integrity fit into all of this?
Well, at its core,
Yeah.
integrity is about aligning your actions with your values,
Okay.
being true to your word, and living a life that's consistent with your beliefs.
So walking the walk.
Yeah, not just talking the talk.
Right.
Yeah.
Cassidy quotes Proverbs 10.9,
Okay.
which states, "Whoever walks in integrity walks securely." It's about building trust.
Yeah.
When a leader demonstrates integrity,
Yeah.
people know that they can rely on them, that their actions will be guided by a consistent set of principles.
It's interesting because we see so many examples of leaders failing to live up to that standard, both in biblical times and in our modern world. What causes that disconnect between values and actions?
I think it's a combination of factors.
Okay.
We live in a world where there's a lot of pressure to compromise,
Right.
to cut corners, to prioritize short-term gains over long-term principles.
Yeah.
It can be so tempting to rationalize our actions, to tell ourselves that just this once, it's okay to bend the rules.
And that's where that fear of the Lord comes back in.
Exactly.
It's that reminder that our actions have consequences.
Yes.
Not just in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual sense as well.
That's
It's about recognizing that true success isn't just about achieving our goals.
right.
It's about living a life that's aligned with our deepest values.
Yes.
I love that.
And that brings us to another crucial quality.
Okay.
Wisdom.
All right. Wisdom.
Cassidy reminds us that James 1.5 encourages us to actively seek wisdom from God.
Okay.
It's not something we're born with.
Right.
It's something that we cultivate through prayer,
Uh-huh.
through reflection, and a willingness to learn from our experiences.
So wisdom isn't just about having knowledge or intelligence. It's about knowing how to apply that knowledge in a way that's both effective and ethical.
Exactly.
So how does a leader actually go about seeking wisdom?
Well, there are many paths to wisdom,
Okay.
but one that Cassidy highlights is the importance of seeking counsel from others.
Okay.
Proverbs 11.3 tells us that
Right.
for lack of guidance, a nation falls, but victory is won through many advisors. A wise leader surrounds themselves with people they trust.
People who can offer different perspectives, challenge their assumptions, and just help them make the best possible decisions.
It's about recognizing that you don't have all the answers
Exactly.
and being humble enough to ask for help,
Right.
which kind of goes back to that humility that we were talking about.
It all ties together.
Right.
It does.
It's about recognizing that leadership is not a solo act. It's a collaborative effort.
Right.
And that collaborative spirit is also essential for the next quality Cassidy discusses.
Oh,
Gentleness.
interesting.
Gentleness.
Yeah.
This one really intrigues me.
Okay.
I always assumed leadership was about being assertive, decisive,
Yeah.
even a bit forceful at times.
Sure.
How does gentleness fit into that picture?
It's an interesting paradox.
Isn't there a risk of appearing weak or indecisive?
Right. And Cassidy actually quotes Anne Hamilton,
Okay.
who argues that gentleness is often overlooked as a leadership quality because we tend to associate it with passivity or weakness. Yeah.
But true gentleness, she describes, is not about being a pushover.
Yeah.
It's about leading with strength, but not harshness.
I see.
It's about being able to correct mistakes, offer criticism,
Right.
even make tough decisions,
Uh-huh.
but doing so in a way that's respectful,
Okay.
empathetic, and ultimately constructive.
So think about a leader who can address conflict
Yeah,
without resorting to anger or intimidation.
right.
That takes real strength and self-control.
It really does.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that.
And Cassidy reminds us that Philippians 4.5
Okay.
encourages us to let your gentleness be evident to all. It's about creating a culture of respect
Okay.
where people feel safe to share their ideas, express their concerns, and even disagree
Yeah.
without fear of retribution.
And I can definitely see how that kind of environment would foster creativity, innovation, and a stronger sense of teamwork.
For sure.
So gentleness is less about being soft and more about being strong in a different way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's about understanding that true leadership involves not just directing others,
Right.
but also inspiring them, motivating them,
Yeah.
and creating an environment where they can truly thrive.
This has been really insightful so far.
It has.
We've talked about fear of the Lord,
Yeah.
humility, integrity, wisdom,
Yes.
and gentleness.
Right.
It's fascinating how each quality builds upon the previous one,
It is.
creating this multifaceted picture of what it means to be a truly effective leader.
That's right.
But Cassidy isn't done yet.
No.
She's got 4 more qualities to explore.
Right.
And I'm eager to see where this conversation takes us next.
Me too.
Mm-hmm.
You're right, we've only just scratched the surface. Cassidy's next quality, courage, might seem like it clashes with gentleness, but I think you'll see how they actually complement each other beautifully.
That's what I love about this deep dive. It's challenging all my assumptions about leadership. Okay, so how does she define courage in a leadership context?
She goes beyond the typical image of the fearless hero charging into battle. For Cassidy, courage is rooted in conviction. It's about doing what you believe is right, even when it's difficult, unpopular, or even risky.
So it's that same idea of trusting in something larger than yourself that we talked about with Moses earlier. It's not the absence of fear, it's acting despite fear because you know you're aligned with a higher purpose.
Exactly. And she references Joshua 1.9, where God tells Joshua, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go."
Powerful stuff.
It is.
So it's about knowing that you're not alone in those tough moments,
Yes.
that there's a higher power supporting you, giving you the strength to carry on.
Think about someone like David, the shepherd who became king. We all know the story of David and Goliath.
That's like the classic example of facing your fears head on.
It is. But even beyond that, David's life was full of challenges and risky decisions.
Yeah, for sure.
He had to navigate court intrigue, lead his people in battles, and even face betrayal from those closest to him.
It makes you wonder if he ever had moments of doubt. Cassidy doesn't shy away from the fact that he wasn't perfect, right?
Not at all. She actually points out that even the most courageous leaders are human. They make mistakes, they experience setbacks, they have moments of weakness.
Which is reassuring, I think. It makes it feel more attainable.
It does.
Like you don't have to be this superhuman figure
Exactly.
to be a great leader.
Right. What sets them apart is their ability to acknowledge those flaws, learn from their mistakes, and keep moving forward with a renewed sense of purpose.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So true courage isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up and continuing the journey.
Exactly. And I think that segues perfectly into the next quality, being relational.
Okay, so how does being relational play into effective leadership? Is this about being everyone's best friend?
It's not about popularity contests. It's about recognizing that leadership is fundamentally about people.
Okay.
Cassidy emphasizes the importance of building genuine connections, actively listening to those you lead, and fostering a sense of trust and respect.
It sounds a lot like those qualities we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
like gentleness and humility. They all seem to be intertwined, don't they?
They absolutely do. Think about Moses again,
Oh, yeah.
leading a massive group of people through the wilderness for 40 years.
That's got to be tough.
That requires more than just giving orders. It requires understanding people's needs, empathizing with their struggles, and inspiring them to keep moving forward even when they're exhausted and discouraged.
And didn't Jesus emphasize the importance of relationships too? The whole idea of loving your neighbor as yourself.
You're exactly right. Cassidy brings in John 13.34, where Jesus says, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another. Just as I have loved you, you also are to love one another."
It's about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of every individual and approaching leadership as an opportunity to serve and empower others,
Right.
not just to exert authority over them.
Exactly.
This is where it all starts to click for me.
Yeah.
It's like we're building this foundation of what biblical leadership really looks like.
I agree.
And it's pretty inspiring.
It is.
Okay, so what's next?
The next quality is readiness.
Readiness.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice? Is it about always having a plan, being prepared for any contingency?
It's more of a mindset than a checklist.
Okay.
It's about cultivating a state of awareness, both spiritually and mentally.
So being present, being engaged.
Yes, Cassidy cites Timothy 4.2, where Paul encourages us to be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort with complete patience and teaching.
So always be ready to step up.
Right. It's about being prepared to respond to whatever challenges or opportunities come your way with wisdom, courage, and grace.
So it's less about predicting the future and more about cultivating the inner resources to face whatever the future holds.
Precisely.
I like that a lot.
A leader who is ready is constantly learning, growing, and seeking God's guidance. They're not caught off guard by unexpected events because they've developed the flexibility and resilience to adapt and respond effectively.
That makes me think of someone like Nehemiah, who led the rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls.
Yes,
That was a massive, complex project.
It was.
Filled with setbacks and opposition. He couldn't have possibly anticipated every challenge, could he?
No, but what stands out about Nehemiah is his unwavering commitment to his vision, his strategic thinking, and his ability to rally people around a common cause.
He sounds like a force to be reckoned with.
He was.
He faced constant opposition, threats, and even sabotage, but he never gave up.
That's right.
So inspiring.
He adapted his plans, mobilized resources, and inspired the people to keep working even when they were exhausted and discouraged.
That must have taken incredible perseverance.
It must have.
Not to mention a deep well of faith to draw upon.
It seems like all of these qualities we've been discussing, courage, being relational, readiness, they all come together in Nehemiah's story.
It does, right. He embodies those principles in such a powerful way.
Absolutely. He exemplifies how these principles can be lived out in a real-world, messy situation.
Okay, so we've made it through all 9 qualities. Fear of the Lord, humility, integrity, wisdom, gentleness, courage, being relational, readiness, and a servant heart. It's been quite a journey, and I already feel like I'm looking at leadership in a whole new light.
Me too. But Cassidy doesn't stop there. She goes on to explore how these principles can be applied in practical ways in our modern lives.
Okay, that's what I'm really interested in.
She even addresses the unique challenges that Christian leaders face in a world that doesn't always share their values.
Now that's what I'm really interested in.
Yeah.
It's all well and good to talk about these qualities in theory,
Right.
but how do we actually put them into practice in our everyday lives? It's like, how do we bridge the gap between these kind of timeless principles
Right.
and the realities of, modern leadership?
Right.
Cassidy offers some pretty practical guidance on making that connection.
She does.
Right.
She outlines 4 key areas
Okay.
where biblical leadership can make a real impact.
All right, let's hear it.
Okay, so we have ethical decision-making,
Yeah.
creating a positive work culture,
Uh-huh.
communicating with clarity and integrity,
Mm-hmm.
and embracing humility and feedback.
All right, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
So ethical decision making,
Yeah,
we can all relate to facing those tough choices
for sure.
where the right answer just isn't always clear.
Right.
How does a biblically informed approach help us navigate those gray areas?
Well, it all goes back to that internal compass we talked about earlier.
Okay.
When we ground ourselves in these biblical principles like integrity, justice, and compassion,
Right.
we have this framework for making choices
Yeah.
that are aligned with our deepest values,
Uh-huh.
even when the pressure is on.
It's not about having like a rule for every situation.
No.
It's more about developing that moral sensibility that guides our actions.
Yes. It can also help you build trust with those that you lead.
Oh, for sure.
When people know that you're guided by strong moral principles, they're more likely to respect your decisions,
Yeah.
even when they don't agree with them.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Okay, so what about creating a positive work culture? We hear a lot about that these days.
Yeah.
How does that connect back to biblical leadership?
Well, it's all about those relational qualities we discussed.
Right.
Think about gentleness, humility, a servant heart.
Mm-hmm.
When a leader embodies those qualities,
Yeah.
it creates this environment where people feel valued,
Right.
respected,
Right.
and empowered.
It's not just about being nice.
No, not at all.
It's about fostering genuine connection.
Yes,
And creating a space where people can thrive.
that's it.
Okay, yeah.
It's about recognizing that everyone has something to contribute,
Uh-huh.
that success is a team effort,
Right.
and that the leader's role is to support and empower their team
Yeah.
to reach their full potential.
It sounds like it takes a lot of self-awareness
It does
and intentionality
Yeah.
to cultivate that kind of culture.
a lot of work.
Doesn't just happen overnight,
Right.
that's for sure.
Right.
Okay, so what's next?
So then we have communicating with clarity and integrity.
Okay.
This is crucial for any leader, but especially for those seeking to embody these biblical principles.
It's about walking the walk
It is.
and talking the talk.
Your words and actions have to be aligned.
No hypocrisy.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
It's about being honest, transparent, and consistent in your communication.
Right.
People need to know they can trust your word
Uh-huh.
and that you're not going to say one thing and do another.
And that reminds me of what we were talking about earlier.
What's that?
About the importance of seeking wisdom from others. Because if you're communicating clearly and openly, you're more likely to get that honest feedback.
Yes.
And you can avoid those blind spots.
Well,
They can lead to bad decisions.
You're absolutely right.
Okay?
And that brings us to the final point.
Okay.
Embracing humility and feedback.
It's a bit tough.
It can be a stumbling block for a lot of leaders.
Yeah, no one likes to be told they're wrong.
It's true.
or that they need to improve.
Right.
It can be a real blow to the ego.
Right. It can feel like a threat to our authority.
Exactly.
But Cassidy makes a really strong case for why this is so important.
She does. She really does.
Yeah.
She reminds us that true humility isn't about putting ourselves down.
Yeah.
It's about having an accurate assessment of our strengths and weaknesses.
It is.
Being open to learning and growing, recognizing that we don't have all the answers.
And if we're not open to feedback,
Yeah.
we just miss out on these valuable opportunities to improve
Right.
and become even more effective leaders.
It's like trying to navigate a maze with your eyes closed.
That's a great analogy.
You're just going to bump into walls.
Right.
And Cassidy shares this really powerful story
It does.
about a time when she had to make this really difficult decision that cost her like a big chunk of her business.
Yes.
And it really struck me because it wasn't just some hypothetical scenario.
Right.
This was a real life situation.
It was.
Where she had to choose between like her values and her bottom line.
And she chose to stand by her convictions.
Yeah.
Even though it was incredibly difficult.
It's such a powerful reminder that integrity isn't just some nice idea.
No.
It's something we have to actively choose.
That's right.
Even when it comes at a cost.
And her willingness to share that story,
Yeah.
to be vulnerable about her struggles, really speaks volumes about her authenticity as a leader.
That it does. Okay, so we've covered these 4 practical ways
Yeah.
to apply these biblical leadership principles.
Correct.
We talked about ethical decision-making, creating a positive work culture,
Yep.
communicating with clarity and integrity,
Yes.
and embracing humility and feedback.
That's right.
But Cassidy also acknowledges that it's not always easy to live out these values.
It's not.
Especially for Christian leaders
Right.
who are navigating a secular world.
Yes.
So what are some of the specific challenges that she highlights?
She identifies 3 main areas
Okay.
where Christian leaders often face tension,
Okay.
moral dilemmas,
Uh-huh.
maintaining integrity, and resisting secular values.
All right, so let's break those down.
Okay.
Starting with moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
What kind of situations might fall into that category?
Well, imagine a leader who's pressured to make a decision
Okay.
that goes against their conscience. Maybe it's something that would benefit the company financially, but it would be ethically questionable.
Right.
Or perhaps they're asked to compromise their values
Yeah.
to please a client or meet a deadline.
Those are tough calls.
They are.
How does a Christian leader navigate those situations without compromising their integrity?
Well, Cassidy emphasizes the importance of grounding ourselves in Scripture, seeking guidance through prayer, and seeking counsel from trusted mentors who share our values.
So surrounding ourselves with a support system
Yes.
that can help us stay true to our convictions.
Exactly.
Even when it's really hard.
And remembering that we're not alone in this journey.
Right.
We have the support of our faith community. We have the guidance of Scripture. And we have the strength that comes from knowing we're aligned with God's will.
Okay, so what about maintaining integrity? We've talked about that throughout our conversation today.
Yes.
But what makes it particularly challenging for Christian leaders in the workplace?
The world often operates according to a different set of rules.
Yeah, that's for sure.
There can be so much pressure to cut corners, bend the truth,
Yeah.
compromise your values to get ahead.
Right. It's like that whole the ends justify the means thing.
Exactly.
And it's so tempting to rationalize our actions, especially when we're under pressure to succeed.
Right. But Cassidy seems to be arguing
Yeah.
that true success is about more than achieving our goals.
Right. It's about how we achieve them.
It's the journey, not just the destination.
I like that.
She reminds us that integrity isn't just about avoiding wrongdoing.
Right.
It's about actively seeking to do what is right, even when it's difficult or inconvenient.
Right. Even when it's not easy.
Yes, and it's about being transparent and accountable, even when we make mistakes.
That takes a lot of courage,
It does.
especially in a world where it feels like,
Yeah,
people are rewarded for cutting corners and looking out for number one.
it can be tough.
And that's where that fear of the Lord comes in.
Right.
It's knowing that our actions have consequences.
Yes.
Not just in a worldly sense, but in a spiritual sense as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the final challenge here, resisting secular values.
Right.
I mean, this feels really relevant today,
Well, for sure.
with all the messages that we're bombarded with
Constantly.
that often clash with our faith.
Yes.
So how does Cassidy suggest we navigate that tension?
She emphasizes the importance of staying grounded in Scripture,
Okay.
seeking guidance through prayer, and surrounding ourselves with a community that shares our values.
It's about having that strong foundation
It is, right?
when the world around us feels shaky.
It's about having that internal compass calibrated
Yeah.
so we can make decisions that are aligned with our faith, even when they go against the grain.
Even when they're not popular.
Exactly.
It's about being in the minority sometimes.
It is.
And knowing that you're standing on solid ground.
Yes. And it's about recognizing that we don't have to do this alone.
Right.
We have each other, we have our faith communities, and we have the strength that comes from knowing that we're not alone in this journey.
So after this deep dive into Cassidy's article, it seems like biblical leadership isn't really about wielding power or climbing the corporate ladder. It's about something much deeper.
It is.
It's about character service and making a positive impact on the world.
It is.
It's about leading with integrity, humility, and compassion,
Yes.
and inspiring others to do the same.
That's right.
And it's a journey that requires us to constantly learn, grow, and rely on God's guidance.
That's right.
Cassidy leaves us with some powerful questions to ponder.
She does, yes.
How do I hold myself accountable for my words and actions? And do I welcome feedback to improve my leadership?
Those are good ones.
Those are really good ones. They're not easy questions, but they're essential ones for anyone who wants to lead with integrity and purpose.
And she challenges us to consider our legacy.
Yeah.
Remember, she says, leadership is not about wielding power, but about empowering others. What will your legacy be?
Powerful stuff. It's a powerful invitation to think about the impact we want to have on the world.
Yeah.
And the kind of leaders we want to be remembered as.
This has been a really insightful deep dive.
It has been. I feel like I have a much richer understanding of what it means to lead in a way that honors both my faith and my desire to make a positive difference.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
And to our listener, we hope this conversation has sparked your own reflections on what it means to lead with purpose, integrity, and a heart for service.
Yeah, because leadership isn't a destination.
It's a journey.
And it's a journey we can take together.
That's right. Supported by our faith, our values, and each other.